All right. So I get questions about cholesterol a lot because the medical community is bound and determined to tell you that God's an idiot and didn't know what he was doing when he made cholesterol, and that the only reason you're ever going to have a heart attack is because you have cholesterol. Uh, that's entirely based on the idea that they just want to sell you statin drugs. That's not a thing at all. Um, the issue that I have with this isn't, I'm not trying to tell you that if you have high cholesterol, you're totally safe. That's not what the argument is. The argument is there's a whole bunch of people with cholesterol that's within the range that have massive plaquing, are going to have heart attacks and strokes, and they're not getting taken care of properly because of the narrative that's being pushed. I have done a decent amount of CT angiograms with patients who they come in, they tell me, they go, I don't have any issues with my heart, my arteries. I'm totally fine. My cholesterol's always been in the range. Since I was a teenager, my cholesterol has been perfectly in the range. I know I'm completely safe. We do a CT angiogram on them and they're like, you're 60% blocked and the four main arteries around your heart. And they're like, but that's not possible. My cholesterol has always been within the range. That has nothing to do with arterial plaquing. What causes arterial plaquing is damage to the cholesterol and damage to the arteries in the area. That damage is caused by things like hypoxia, which we get from sleep apnea. It's caused by metabolic damage, like high fasting insulin, high fasting glucose, so insulin resistance. It's caused by infections, like from the gums and from the teeth. It's caused by gut infections and things like that. So high stress also causes it. These are the things that actually cause arterial plaquing, but they're not tied to something that you can easily prescribe a drug for. So no one's told that. No one's told they should get an echocardiogram to see a video of your heart actually beating. That'll show us myocarditis. It'll show us leaky valves. It'll show us thin walls. It'll show us how much blood's actually kicked out of the heart as it beats. Literally every single thing your heart does as a mechanical option to pump blood, we can see on an echocardiogram. It's not a very expensive test. And then in the CT angiogram is a dye study. And so if your blood vessel is this big and there's this much dye in it, guess what? You're fine. If your blood vessel is this big and there's this much dye in it, that's bad. So it's a really easy way to see, do you actually have plaquing in your arteries? And when you run this on people, you know. But the problem is that the answer to that is not statin drugs. It is something else. And so those tests are not routinely done. In fact, you normally have to have had a heart attack before they'll allow you to get these tests done, which is the most asinine thing I've ever heard. Like, let's do the preventative test after you've had the heart attack. And by the way, most people, when they have their first heart attack, they die, or there's significant damage to the brain, to the heart, or something that could have easily been prevented had we just checked earlier. So my recommendation is if you have heart attacks and strokes in your family, and if you're worried about that, I would 100% get a CT angiogram, and I would get an echocardiogram and actually look at the problem. So if the problem isn't cholesterol, the problem is plaquing from all these issues. Look for the plaquing. Don't look for the thing that allows you to get diagnosed a drug or prescribed a drug. Look for the actual problem. Get a CT angiogram. If your doctor won't do it, find somebody who will. Calcium CTs are the next step down. They're not as good. They don't see the soft plaque, but they do see hardened plaque and hardening of the arteries, which is a good thing to know. And a lot of times, hardening the arteries is a K2 issue. Erythritol is also very beneficial for that. But if we're specifically talking about cholesterol and the damage from cholesterol, that's the issue. You guys need to look at that. Now, here's the thing. If you're looking at yourself and you're like, I wonder if I'm at risk for this. Well, let's look at it. How's your waist looking? How much visceral fat do you have? Those are major indicators. Do you snore? Like, these are major indicators that you need to get checked out. So, if you have a CPAP and you haven't looked at your cardiovascular system yet, you need to. So if you've got bad teeth and gums, you need to get checked out. If you go to the dentist and they're like, you've got pocketing and you've got, we need to do deep cleaning stuff, you should get yourself checked out. And again, the CT angiogram. Now, the best stuff is the CT angiogram with something called Clearly. It's AI that kind of looks inside. It uses the computer to figure out any of the plaquing stuff. That's the top of the line. That's the best we have so far. And that's the one I usually recommend. It is obviously more expensive, but it is, if you're worried about it, it's the one I would do. So quit looking at your blood labs and freaking out. Actually look at your arteries, actually look at your heart. This is silly to me that we have these studies that look exactly at the problem we're worried about, but we're like, well, let's not use those. Let's use a blood test that has no correlation at all with the actual problem. So, but that's really where those are. So you can look at APOB, you can look at, VLDL, you can look at all these different things. It's not going to give you an actual picture of what's going on with your cardiovascular system. You need to actually get checked. We've done CT angiograms on guys who have been like, I am positive, I'm totally fine because my cholesterol's been great. And we're like, you need to go get stents. We used to do Doppler ultrasounds. This is a great story. We used to do Doppler ultrasounds on people on the carotid arteries. And Aetna came back and told us that we didn't need to do those studies and that they were going to sue us for doing them. And the way that they do their investigations is they pull 5 random files. 4 of the 5 random files they picked, we saved the person's life. 3 of the files, we got letters from their cardiovascular surgeon who said, had we not done the Doppler ultrasounds of their carotid arteries, they'd be dead. So yeah, if you guys are getting headaches, if you're getting fatigue, if you're getting these things, if you've had all the list of things I just talked about, you need to get your arteries looked at. So this is the big issue. So again, I'll run through them again. If you haven't been checked for these and you have a cardiologist, you need to find a different doctor. Come to see. I'll get them all set up for you. If you haven't had a sleep study, if you snore and you haven't had a sleep study to check for your apnea at night, you need to do that. If you've got a large belly and you don't know your visceral fat, go get a DEXA so they can give you a rough idea of where you're at. That's a massive problem because it creates inflammation that creates all these problems. If you have high fasting insulin, if you have high fasting glucose, if you know you have insulin resistance, which a vast majority of you do, you need to get that checked. If you haven't been to the dentist in a while and you have bleeding gums infection, you're at risk. If you've got bad gut issues, you're at risk. If you have high stress, you're at risk. So keep these things in mind. And if you have these things, go get the actual testing done that's going to show you the actual issue and drive you to the actual resolution of the actual problem, which is the CT angiogram and the echocardiogram. You can pull blood all day long as much as you want to. It's not going to give you the same information as the CT angiogram and echocardiogram. However, the CT angiogram doesn't necessarily directly lead to statin drugs, and the blood tests always do. So that's where it is. Your LDL cholesterol is also super important. It carries everything in your body. D2 your body can't make D3 without it. All steroids come from sterols. So cholesterol becomes steroids. So estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, cortisol, all of those require cholesterol to become hormones that run your body. Your brain has a big piece of that. It's lots of stuff's going on in your brain is due to cholesterol function, which is why when we're starting to see in the research this massive dose of statin drugs, we're starting to see a correlation with dementia. So we remove the chemicals the brain requires to function, and all of a sudden it doesn't function as well. Who would have thunk it? And then we see people on statin drugs, they get fatigue, they get depression, they get joint pain, they get osteoporosis. So when we decrease the levels of functional testosterone in the body, all the things that are tied to testosterone start getting worse. It's so weird. It's like the body was designed with purpose. Anyway, so this is one of those things. We need to start addressing the actual issues, doing the tests that actually look for the problems we're trying to get solved and deal with it that way. Like when our executive physical, our big physical that we do, has an echocardiogram, it has a sleep study, it has a CT angiogram for cardiovascular function. We can also pull DNA and we can look through DNA function, but that's a long-term function, not a immediate function. So I would highly recommend, if you haven't gotten those tests done and you have any heart attack or stroke in your family, that you get those tests done. But that's kind of where that is. So that's the way I answer the cholesterol question every time, because if you're worried about your blood tests, I don't think that you're looking at the right markers for what's actually going on with your cardiovascular system. So that's not what physiology has shown us. But anyway, so that's kind of the cholesterol question. I get this a lot, and so I wanted to run through it. But there you guys go. If you have any questions, email us, questions@chalmerswellness.com, or drop them in the comments. You guys have a fantastic day.